Hey boys and girls, it's your old pal Dave to tell you about this week's sponsor, Freshly.com. Are you like me? Do you want to try to eat healthy, but there isn't always time to run out and go shopping and buy fresh ingredients or even time to do the cooking? Well, Freshly.com has the answer for you. This is a great program for busy people who are trying to eat better. They send you prepared meals and they're refrigerated, never frozen. Meals are ready in 3 minutes. And it's delicious food. They have a Southwest bowl that I love. Sicilian-style chicken parm, grilled chicken roasted with butternut squash, chicken rice pilaf, turkey shepherd's pie. I mean, just amazing, delicious food. And it goes on and on. All their meals are guaranteed fresh, healthy, gluten-free, and free from refined sugars. So you know you're eating right. And the best part is right now, if you use our exclusive offer, use the code SUPERHERO at checkout, you will get $40 off your first 2 orders and free shipping on every single order. That's 6 meals cooked by Freshly's chefs for only $39. And again, this food is amazing. You'll love it. I guarantee. So give them a try. Head on over to Freshly.com, order your first meals today, use the code SUPERHERO and get your first 2 meals on us. Again, that's Freshly.com and use the code SUPERHERO at checkout. Thanks.
Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of 3 opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor, more powerful than a bad comic book event, able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
And I'm JD.
And John is off this week. He is actually on a trip for his work, his day job, so he couldn't make it this week, but that's all right. We're going to soldier on. We have a great guest with us. We have Eric Borden with us, who is the writer-creator of Scrimshaw, which is a comic that is distributed by Alterna Comics. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Not a problem. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about this a little bit on the show. We really haven't talked about the relationship we have with Alterna now. It's our reviewer, Matt Vroom, reached out to your company, or to the company, and said, hey, can we review some comics, get on a list? And then I reached out and said, hey, if anyone's interested in doing an interview, coming on the show, let me know. And you guys, we have a lot of interviews lined up. You guys gave us a great response, so happy for that.
Yeah, man, Alterna's doing a lot of great things. Obviously, bringing back newsprint. They're introducing multiple titles next year, and we were just happy to be able to take part in bringing back the newsprint. And yeah, there's a lot of young, hungry creators that are on the Alterna roster. So yeah, we're just out there probably as a whole and really trying to get some, get a spotlight on the titles and just get it out there, see what can happen,
Right. Cool. So we'll get into them a little bit as we go on here, but a little bit about you first. So, is writing something you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, I came out of the film industry, basically. I started as a screenwriter way back when, and kind of went through that rigmarole, and then took a number of years off from writing. I mean, it really is a job. Anybody who's out there writing and trying their hand at that and trying to hang a shingle, you got to put in the hours, and you really got to have a desire to do that. So, when I moved to Las Vegas, I got into the club industry and all of that entails. And then, just came back to it and started writing films again, and started with shorts. And then, you're going to write a feature. So where are you going to go? So I went to UCLA after that and took part in their writing program and wrote a feature at UCLA, which was pretty well received. And I optioned it a couple years back to Blanc Bean Productions, which is, Michael Bean and Jennifer Blanc Bean's production company. And that script was titled Fever, and kind of went through that process and having run into, all of the pitfalls that a film production can. You want to have a bit more control over the product and what you're creating. And, obviously having a background in film and knowing what storyboarding is, I figure what art form can you do that is going to allow you to, display next to some of the greats at any comic convention anywhere. You can get your team together, put the art together, put the story together, and, jump right into the deep end, so to speak. And so, I made a move to comics to have more control over what came out. Doesn't take a legion of people to create a comic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that allows you, just by what it is, to have more control over the finished product. So I went ahead and did my first couple of books and fumbled around with that during the learning curve. And, Alterna was nice enough to have my third effort, which was Scrimshaw, and kind of developed that, and it just took off. So super enthusiastic about that. But yeah, kind of a winding road to get to comics.
Yeah,
I guess you could say, but definitely it's bearing fruit, and it's a lot of fun, and was exactly what I was looking for in terms of being able to have control over the project and being able to do what it is I wanted to do in the end as a creator and as a writer, more so.
right. I mean, you're not the first creator that we've had on the show that actually took that same sort of path. And, I mean, it's, in a way, it's still visual storytelling. I think you can get away with a little bit more in comic books than you can in movies and television. But, it's still a visual tool. So it's an interesting leap, but were you a fan of comics before you made the leap?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I grew up, and that's what was so great about the Alterna newsprint situation was I grew up riding up to the 7-Eleven in the Circle K up from my house and picking up Warlord comics off the spinner rack. I think that was one of the first books I ever picked up was Warlord by Mike Grell and from DC. And man, I was, that was right in my wheelhouse at the time because I was into Dungeons and Dragons and things of that nature, being a big geek even at a young age. And so, yeah, from there, obviously into X-Men and New Mutants and things like that. And yeah, just a natural progression. It was something that I was always into. So yeah, it's one of my earliest memories is that spinner rack and picking up those newsprint books and just going on the adventures they were taking me on back then, for sure.
Right. So I guess you would say Mike Grell is a definite early influence of yours.
100%. In fact, I just went out for our Black Friday sale out to Maximum Comics here in Las Vegas, and they were having an awesome sale, and I probably went back and purchased a part of my childhood back this past week. So that was pretty awesome. My wife was less than enthusiastic about the short box that came in the house all at once. So
yes. Oh yeah, there's our local shop here. Every once in a while, when they're trying to get rid of some of their back issues, they'll do a fill a short box for like $1 an issue,
Yeah.
And I'll do that every once in a while, and my wife just looks at me like, "What are you doing?"
It's like, when is enough?
Never.
No, absolutely. That's nostalgia can get costly. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, and we're in a golden age of being nostalgic too, for things, with reboots and recreating, and Star Wars is back. Comic books are big in the movie theater, and it's tough to let your childhood go.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a great time to be in it too. Like you said, when being a geek is now cool. Everybody's watching comic book movies. Everybody's going to those, and it's in the forefront now more than ever, which is pretty cool for all us old dorks. You know what I mean?
Yes. So for the listeners at home, can you give us the elevator pitch of Scrimshaw?
Absolutely. Scrimshaw is a post-apocalyptic dystopian adventure. It takes place 2 generations after the melt of the polar ice caps. And corporations have filled the void where world governments once stood. And one of those corporations thinks it'd be a great idea to genetically modify whales to be over 200 feet long and introduce them into the oceans. And that had a catastrophic effect. And so now the ocean is one big fish farm. And that's kind of where it takes off. These corporations kind of rule. Japan has risen as a world power and sort of a meek inherit the earth bent. And they rally under the edict that science shall be our salvation. And so our crew comes together. They crew a fishing vessel called the Runaway Horse, and they hail from all over the Pacific Basin, from countries like Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, American Samoa, and kind of kicks off from there and follows that crew through their adventure.
Right. So I guess you went with the see, that's an interesting twist. You went with the ice caps melting as your apocalyptic point. I would think Japan would be underwater at that point.
Yeah, one of the unique ways we got around that is because obviously, people with the science that's out there and that we all know, if you choose to believe the science. I don't want to get political. I know John's off this week, but yeah.
You have been listening.
Oh yes, absolutely. But if you're paying attention to the science, some people obviously know it's coming, and so some of the world governments go ahead and decide to prepare for it and build these gigantic seawalls to hold back the rising tide. And so that's kind of where they jump off, and Japan is one of those. And also walls are a handy thing to keep out, just like in medieval times, they'll keep any of the riffraff out that you don't necessarily want coming into your country. So again, in a sans political bent, it'll keep the refugees out if you don't want them. And so it kind of definitely takes that bent and things like that. But Japan was one of those forward thinking countries that went ahead and decided to do that because they don't have much land either, so they were kind of ahead of the curve in that respect. So,
and I know he'll never listen to this because he doesn't go back and listen to episodes, but John C. Walls can be a good thing.
Jeez.
Wow. So I mean, it's definitely an interesting story. I can see how you can definitely make that work in today's climate. What's kind of the feedback you get from people on it?
A lot of people, and we wanted to stray. People definitely dig the post-apocalyptic bent. If that's your genre, people will get into it. I wanted to do something a little different, because just about everyone takes kind of this hardcore Mad Max post-nuclear situation where everybody's dirty and there's no, it's, of course there'd be savagery, but of course there'd be pockets that still maintain their civility. And obviously you wouldn't lose all knowledge of how to advance your society. And so I wanted to tune in what happens after the initial situation after that. And I think people are digging it because it takes on this, Neo Tokyo vibe to it. And it's a little more advanced because people did preserve their science and some civility. And we were able to draw kind of more nuanced lines in between like the corporate situation and things that I mentioned before, the politics and things like that. We're kind of in an advanced level from that, and people are digging it because it's not the same old in terms of, your typical post-APOC story in that, it's just the dregs of humanity have survived, and it's a dog-eat-dog world. There still is some civility, and the science has survived, and that is what allowed certain countries to prosper. Not that pockets of that don't exist, and we hope to get to explore that, but we try to, at least have it be a bit more sophisticated in that, and people are receiving it very well so far. All the conventions we've done have done really well, and people seem to be digging that because it's a little different.
Cool. And who are the artists that you have working?
I work primarily with David Mims. He does pencils, colors. He does it all in terms of the art. He's his style, kind of that gritty, has almost an anime influence to it, but it's super dark, and he uses these thick, scratchy lines, and his colors are awesome. He's the only one that does art for the book. That's why we're a bi-monthly title. We like to give Dave a little bit of time to stretch his legs and do what he does.
Right.
And then, my man Spike Alaktia is he's on letters for us, and he does a phenomenal job as well. So that's what we work with. But in our graphic, kind of one of the things that I like to do is we work with a bunch of artists, though. There are artists from about a half dozen different countries, because at the end of every issue, I like to insert a captain's log, which is all the fun stuff that I like to do. When I grew up, I was reading something that they did this book called The Aliens Technical Manual, and I remember reading that as a younger guy, and it was all of the super like schematics and nerd stuff that you get into, and like history of old battles and things like that. And I think I remember that having a big influence on me as a younger guy. And so when I got older, I was like, man, I want to do a captain's log, since they run a ship and they have this seafaring sort of economy and everything's based on that. We included what was a captain's log. So I employ other artists from all over the place to do like fictitious advertisements for businesses that exist in the future. And we do, like ship schematics of the Runaway Horse, which is the crew's boat.
Mhm.
And we include all the character profiles and stuff like that. So I have worked with probably about a half dozen other artists on that, but Dave Mims is the primary artist on that sort of thing. So
All right,
all,
cool.
all credit to him for the visuals.
So I have to apologize because I didn't do all of my research beforehand, and I'm actually looking at the art now, and no, it's very good, and it almost has. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It almost has an old style animation feel to it. It maybe like, and I'm just like, I was gonna say, did you kind of go for an anime feel without going for it?
That was one of the things that drew me to Dave. Like, I originally wrote the first two characters, Hans and Saigo. Captain
Mhm.
Hans is the main character. And I originally wrote these as two short scripts, just to keep my chop sharp. I take part in a writing prompt contest every year called NYC Midnight. And
Okay.
I created those two characters, in a writing prompt contest. And so it kind of evolved from there. And as I was doing it being concepted as a short script first, I was like, you know what? These characters were living with me. And so I wanted to really find somebody who could just draw them, even if I hung it up on the wall of my office and was like, you know what? I just want to see them live. And I'll never make this movie because it costs
Mhm.
way too much money.
Right.
So let me go ahead, and nobody's going to give a guy like me any money to do anything like that. So, that's Marvel level though. So what we did was I found Dave on freelance.com, and I just looked for a style that I thought would fit. And Dave just jumped right out the minute I put it out there. Obviously, with it being influenced and taking place in Japan, obviously there's a heavy anime influence. So yeah, Dave's style was there. And I'm like, you know what? I think we can make this work. And when he drew them, they just leapt off the page, and the rest of the crew was born out of that. But yeah, Dave's style immediately jumped, with kind of the post APOC, but also
Mhm.
it taking place in Japan. And yeah, that style is kind of what I was going for. And Dave just captured it right off the bat, which was really cool.
Yeah, I'm actually loving this. It's amazing. I'm going to have to pick these books up. So, and speaking of that, so you were talking a little bit about them I keep saying that wrong. I know it's
Yeah, Alterna
alternative,
Comics.
it's alternative without the TIVE.
Exactly.
They're bringing newsprint back.
Yeah.
Like I haven't actually seen any of the physical books yet. Are you getting a strong reaction on it? I would imagine old school fans love it.
Yeah. The really crazy thing is as we've been going to conventions with these books and things like that, a lot of people are getting into it. I mean, anytime, and that was kind of Peter Simetti's kind of the method behind the madness is, I guess, DC gave this talk about how do you reach an ever shrinking comics audience, back in San Diego this past year. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that was the bent was, there's an ever shrinking audience, and the margins are getting tighter and things like that. And Peter just went back to what people were doing years and years ago, and just, getting books into alternative markets. Like I don't know where you picked up your first comic, but I got my first comic at Circle K. You can't, you don't see a comic book within a smell in any of those places
Right.
anymore. And so he's just taking something old and making it new again. And that's the genius of it. And the price point being $1.50, that preserves the margins and allows you to, have these people who may not take a chance on your book being an indie. Anybody will shell out $1.50 for a book and, give something new a try, which I think is crucial for an indie creator.
Mm-hmm.
You can't compete with either the artists, the market share, or the storytelling on those levels. Well, let me not even say that. You actually can compete, but getting the eyes on the product is the hardest thing, because, I mean, they already know they're competing for an ever shrinking pie. But I mean, if you're going to get new eyes, we all know who's visiting comic shops, and that's people who are comic geeks.
Right.
You don't happen into a gun shop to not buy a gun, why would people happen into, a comic book shop if they're not looking for comics? So you need to kind of, go to where people aren't looking for comics, You're going to get them on the shelf in front of eyeballs, and, people are going to make that impulse buy that $1.50 comic in the supermarket or the drugstore or something like that, and maybe just get their kids started on something new. So yeah, it's been actually revolutionary for something that we already knew about, if only 20 years ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm actually shocked that Marvel and DC haven't tried to get a deal with 7-Eleven to put spinner racks back in. You know?
I mean, it'd be a brilliant move, I mean, why wouldn't you do that? It would seem, I mean, with all the cross promotion they already have, I mean, they got them on Slurpee cups, why wouldn't you throw a spinner rack in the book? You got promos at McDonald's and stuff like that. It's like you're missing a huge potential market share. And like we said, as all the real old school geeks get even older, man, you have to introduce, a younger audience and do something to appeal to the millennials, who are going to be even harder to pry that cash out of their hands,
right,
so to speak, or at least just get them inured to the industry. I mean, the movies are already there. They're on point with that, but getting the physical books and kind of introducing the history of these characters is going to be important if you really want to capture, a new audience or a larger audience even.
Right. I mean, that's another thing too. Put them in movie theaters. People are going to see these movies. They might stop and go, "Oh, let me pick up the Thor comic while I'm here."
Yeah.
So, I mean, JD, you're being quiet, and you're the younger one here.
Well, I'm going to be the devil's advocate on this.
Okay.
The reason they don't do those kind of things, especially in 7-Elevens and stuff like this, because back in the day, those were returnable, right? You could spend. You can't. They don't do that anymore. Like the magazine business is just different. Like it doesn't run the same way. Like they don't. That's why they don't do that in those places. And in the movie theaters, who pays for them? Like, are they loss leaders for the company, or is a movie theater going to stock these comics? Like if Marvel and DC are just going to buy a bunch of these, send them to the theaters in hopes people pick them up, they're better off making them free than expecting people to spend $10 on a ticket, turn around and spend $4 on a comic. Like, I get the theory, but the business application of it doesn't quite work as well. So I mean, if you're gonna write them off as just loss leaders altogether, then you might as well make them free. Like in Justice League, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to have Jeff Johns' first issue and just give it away. That would have been something that would cost DC money. And if they were to print it on newsprint like Alterna does, then you might have something going. But you got to spend money to make money, I guess. And I'm not a bean counter, so I mean, it's hard to justify that, but that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a grand experiment, that's for sure. I mean, you already have some background with that, but yeah, I see where you're coming from, for sure. You certainly would have to make it newsprint because nobody's going to buy the high gloss thing. But I know they did and of course I missed it because I was busy working, but they had an opening weekend for Justice League. They did have a promotional comic if you belong to like the AMC situation, or you saw Justice League on opening weekend. They were doing kind of get the promotional comic or something like that. I'm sure it wasn't issue 1, but I know they had a kind of a cross promotion involved with that.
See, that's cool. If DC or Marvel, whoever's willing to eat a little bit on it, it could be a great way to try to get people in. I think that's the biggest problem. We've talked about it in the show a bunch, is how do you get people into the stores if they don't know they want comics to begin with? Yeah. That's the hardest part, and that's the nut that I think everyone's, part of the cliche trying to crack.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know how to do that in today's market, as you were saying there, JD, other than my only argument is, number one, I still feel the price point, they've gone crazy with the price point on comics, especially the
Absolutely.
big two. And two, 7-Eleven can't return any of the food that they buy.
Mm-hmm.
So, why not?
Well, it's not, well, again, but what does, like, print-wise, it costs X to print up a lot of those books, right? So the companies are losing. They stopped doing it because they weren't making money.
Right. No,
right.
I get that.
So that's the hard thing to come out with. That's why, Johnny Digital will come out and sing the praises of digital, but, not today.
Johnny Digital, no, newsprint. That's what we want.
I think it's a great idea. If you're going to print, I think what they're doing is a great idea. Like, I think that anything you do to bring the cost of comics down, comics are outrageous. Like, and I'm a writer too. Like, I get it. Like, I understand, but I think this is a positive step in the right direction of how do we get people to try new books, especially indies. Like, what do you do to get people to try something new? And I think the price point, because he's right, $150, of course you're going to try that out. Someone gives me a recommendation for a book and says, oh, it's only $1.50. All right, I can do that. You know, the Doomsday Clock was $5. Like, come on. It makes total sense. So I'm totally on board with what you guys are doing.
Cool. So, something I did want to ask you is, Eric, obviously, Alterna is printing the book and distributing it, but what's Horde Media? Is that your company or? Hello? Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hello? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm back. Okay. Apparently I hit the mute button on my headset here, so we're back in.
Okay. Not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Horde Media is a couple friends of mine and I. That's what we rallied our first project, Scrimshaw, under. And, you know, we just wanted to form it up and dot the I's and cross the T's. And also we have a tendency to do crazy things. Like when we introduced Scrimshaw, we had Saigo. We had a blade made by a gentleman who works in titanium, and he runs Mummert Knives. His name's Mark Mummert. So we like to do things like have Saigo's blade made in titanium, and we gave that away when we debuted the book at Silicon Valley Comic Con. So obviously we had to form the business entity that would allow us not to get sued should somebody go crazy with that. And, you know, unfortunately in the litigious society that we live in, that is a must. So, but yeah, we're kind of rallying on that. We have a couple of the projects that we've been working on and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just kind of a banner that we rallied under to, you know, form up a creative brain trust, so to speak.
Cool. And, something the listeners might be interested in. Correct me if I'm wrong. With Alterna, it's a creative. It's a creator-owned book, right? You still own the book.
100%. Yeah, we maintain all creative rights to the book. They basically just have the right to distribute our creative property, and you know, they take their percentage and move on from there. But yeah, if anybody wants to make a Scrimshaw movie, just go ahead and contact me right away. We can get that deal done, no problem.
Yes, and make sure you credit us.
Yeah, but that relationship with Alterna Comics has been invaluable to me. Like, Peter's been in business for over 10 years now, and the amount of hand holding he's done for me, introducing me to the business and getting me up to speed that allows me to do what I need to do, has been invaluable to me. Like, the guy's just a font of knowledge and has no problem sharing it with you, but he also gives you the tough love as well. Like, he's not out there babying creators either. So if you got a nosebleed, just keep rolling and get the book in on time. That's his deal. He definitely knows his business, and he's handling it well, and he's been able to grow it, and that's been allow him to introduce a lot more titles next year and bring on creators from all over the place. So if you're looking for an opportunity and you're an indie creator, definitely submit to Alterna, but bring your helmet. Be ready.
Cool. That's what I was going to follow up with. Would you recommend other creators to jump on? Cool.
100%. Like I said, the business knowledge that Peter's helped me with, just in kind of being a newcomer to the business side of comics, is absolutely it. But also, that being said, as a creator, he's allowed me to do what it is I do in the style in which I do it. He'll be there to, give you the guiding hand. This works. This doesn't work. These are the things I see. These are the things I don't see. This is what you could do better or not better. But in terms of what the meat of your story is and what story you're trying to tell and the way you want to tell it, he's going to let you do that. And that's amazing as a creator. That's for sure. I mean, any of the big two out there, they're definitely going to have an editor on you and make you do your thing. That's for sure. You may not end up with the product that you'd initially intended. So, if you're looking to tell your story, I'd definitely get in with Alterna for sure.
Cool. And, just and I'm sure this is going to be boring to some people, but I'm so curious about these kinds of things. Like, how much promotion do they do, and how much does it fall back on you? Like, is it you live in, it's your property, so it lives and dies by you, you know, or is it your they're helping you get the word out even more?
Well, we're pretty lucky. Alterna has being in business for over 10 years, they have a really good and welcoming fan base,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty amazing. Like, a new project for them just to be able to put their fan base in touch with your project is pretty amazing. But also, it may not be someone's cup of tea. So you still have to go out and you still have to pound the pavement. You still have to be out there finding innovative ways to promote your book. And that's going to be up to you. And you're required to do a certain amount of shows a year. And we do a lot more with that because that's kind of our forte. Horde Media's forte is getting out there and shaking hands with people and stuff like that. Me and my two partners, we come from a hospitality background. And that's one of the things at comic conventions that we noticed is a lot of creators, obviously, a lot of nerds are introverted. We just happen to be nerds that are extroverted, or at least required to do that for our daily bread.
Right.
And so that has helped us immensely at these comic conventions and things like that, is to get out there and shake hands and meet people and talk to them and find out what their projects are and stuff like that. And that background in hospitality has been invaluable to us in help building our fan base, which has been really fun. But yeah, they definitely require you to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And as Peter puts it, you need to eat, sleep, and breathe that book. And it's not just conventions. It's not just the book trade, because I've done a number of signings at Barnes and Noble and things like that. But we're getting ready for a pretty slick promotional effort that I put together called the Christmas Shop Comic Blitz. And we had some Christmas stockings printed up with the Alterna Comics logo, and we're going to go there and get some of these newsprint comics in people's hands and get them in touch with Scrimshaw kind of on the ground level, and put them in touch with it. But yeah, Alterna will definitely introduce you to their fan base, but your title's gonna live and die by what you put into it, for sure. But that's with any creative endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe in your project, nobody else is going to do it either. It's that Lion King mentality. I think a lot of creators just want to go up on Pride Rock and lift their project up and be like, hey, somebody take it from me,
Right.
but that's not it. Just creating the book is just half of it. The other half is getting out there and promoting it and getting people's hands and, have people get in touch with it and things like that. And that's where the real work comes in. Like, all of us love to create. Not everybody loves to, go out there and shake hands and, tell them your spiel 800 times at, Salt Lake City Comic Con and stuff like that. You'll be hoarse and looking for the throat spray by the end of the weekend. That's for sure. But
Right.
that's what it takes. If you want to be in the game, that's what it takes.
No, cool. I mean, and I think this is stuff that it's important for independent creators to hear too, because like, I think a lot of people, especially young artists and stuff, have a dream of, I'll go work for one of the big two, and yes, granted, if you go and work on, I can't even say Fantastic Four because that's still canceled at this point. You go work on X-Men, that it's going to sell X number of copies, regardless if you're bad or good on it, and you don't have to go out and personally promote it because Marvel's going to do that for you. But if it's your thing and you're creating it, you got to let people know that it exists and have them, come and look at it. And I don't think, especially young people in school, they don't realize making a dream come true takes some work.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things for sure. And the sooner you get in touch with that and get over it and get out there, you'll
Mm-hmm.
actually come to enjoy it. That's what really, really gets people in touch with the thing you've created. And that's, quite frankly, that's the best validation of letting what you're doing right is when people dig it, and conversely, like, you also have to have the expectation that it doesn't matter if you write it and it's perfect for you and, your artist has it so dialed in that it's perfect for them. You can't let the critics necessarily get to you either,
Oh, yeah.
any level of creator. You just have to believe in what you're doing and know what you're creating and get out there and, find your crowd because they're out there. Just keep going and keep doing it and find your crowd. That's the number one thing, because the only way you're going to do that is get out there and put it in people's hands and, wait for the blowback or wait for the pat on the back. It's one of the two.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. The, like obviously I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I listen to The Nerdist, and, he's always, Chris Hardwick's always like, just go out and make a thing. And it's like, yeah, you can just go out and make a thing, but if you just make it, it doesn't mean anything until people actually consume it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the rude awakening comes in. Like, you get into the arts for the art of it, but then, without the promotion of the thing, you're not going to continue in the arts. That's for darn sure. That's
right.
the ugly truth of the thing. Capitalism.
Oh yes. There is a fine line between, being an artist and being a, salesman.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, how many, do you have a plan for Scrimshaw? Like, do you have an idea, like, you have a 10-story arc in you, and you want to at least get that out and then see what happens after that? Or are you just, seeing where it leads you?
Yeah, right now we're slated for 12 issues.
Okay.
I tend to do 6-issue arcs. It gives me a little bit more room to stretch my legs, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And being a screenwriter, I like to develop things. Like I throw people into the deep end and then reveal things. So I write from a little different standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the cool thing. But it's also, I definitely want to get people in touch with the characters and things like that and have it unfold slowly. But yeah, we'll do 2 arcs and we'll see where we end up. And if we can do more, there's definitely the world there to do it. In doing the captain's log, we've created an extremely diverse and large world. And if we could continue past that, we most certainly will. But the story's there for it to continue on well past 12 issues.
Cool.
But as Peter put it so succinctly, we don't yet carry the name to be able to, just write indefinitely. So
right.
Yeah, that's where we're at. But yeah, we're definitely slated for 12 issues.
Cool. So you did say if anyone wants to do a Scrimshaw movie to contact you, who would be your dream cast?
Oh man. Well, obviously, the easiest part for me to cast right off the bat is, we have Herman, who's a big fella from American Samoa. That would obviously be Jason Momoa. 100% right off the bat. That would be super easy to cast. Man, Saigo, who could I put as Saigo? And so, what's her name? Numi Rapace would play.
Okay.
Numi Rapace would play Nairi because she's from New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a hardcore Maori chick from New Zealand who is ex-Special Forces, so that would be easy to cast as well. That would be super cool. Man, Captain Hans. I honestly, Captain Hans, because he's based off of, and this will date me very hardcore. He's based off of Richard Chamberlain and Shogun from back in the day. So that's going to date me. But yeah, to find somebody of that artistic level to play in a comic book movie, I don't know if we'd get there, but, man, I don't know. That's a great question. I'd have to go from there, I guess. But yeah, definitely Jason Momoa and Numi Rapace. Those were shoo-ins for 2 of those characters.
Cool.
And they have definitely a lovely, lovely relationship between those 2. So.
Cool. Got to be careful though. A movie studio could pick it up and you could end up with, Batman v Superman.
Sure. Hey, that's always the risk you run when you let somebody big pick it up. That's when you let the guys with the MBAs take over the casting,
Right.
That's always what happens. But I think they'll watch their step with what's going on in Hollywood these days, so to speak. You just never know.
I don't know.
Let's be honest. They'll never, too much money in the game. They'll never watch their step.
No.
So, Eric, what was your inspiration for creating this? Like, what kind of led you down the road to creating this world and these characters?
Number one was kind of, like I said, I wrote it originally as a short screenplay, and obviously the main character was based off that Shogun-esque kind of stranger in a strange land, like this Englishman removed from polite society and kind of thrust into feudal Japan of the time. So that's where I wanted to go, like just the dichotomy between where the character started and where the character ended, or at least began the story, so to speak. That really drew me to it. It was like, okay, what if we did that, and what if we placed it in the future? But then after that, and speaking with a friend of mine who's a partner of mine in Horde Media, his name's Rashad Tabib, we discovered the rest of the characters. Like, what would their job be? And it all dawned on me all at once. It was like, well, of course they run a whaling ship in the future, because, you know, we've obviously the track record of what we're doing to the planet, and without going political here, we're obviously destroying the ocean and things like that. And if you listen to the science behind it, then yeah, we're headed down the wrong path with that. So it kind of was easy to marry this new post-apocalyptic scenario with this crew, and having it set in Japan, it was easy to bring together characters of different ethnicities and have them all relate to one another as kind of a family. And really the crew has been likened to Firefly and that whole bent, but I guess anytime you get a ship put together. But really it's kind of a message book, you know. It talks about political overreach and corporate greed and the way those things are shaping the planet we live in. And until you find out that you can't eat money, you know, we'll continue going down the wrong path. And so I just imagined what that would look like down the road. And that's where it took over. And the characters were born out of the location and who I would bring together in order to tell a diverse a story as possible, you know, with having both men and women from all different walks of life and things like that, and different backgrounds. It just enriches the story. You know, the more different they are, the more possibility for friction and things like that. So yeah, it was born out of that.
I dig this. You're speaking my language. What led you to Alterna? There's a lot of indie publishers out there, and a lot of them, I don't know. I don't see why I don't think they're as strong as Alterna. What was your path toward finding Alterna as a publisher?
Well, Alterna was doing a really cool thing that when we were first even creating Scrimshaw, obviously, you know, you got to start the placement of your finished product before you get the product finished. And so we were kind of prowling, you know, Kickstarter and things like that. And coming from a filmic background, we saw that Peter Samedi, who runs Alterna Comics, he was doing a Kickstarter for his graphic novel that he was turning into a movie called The Chair. And obviously, being in a film background, I was intrigued by that kind of arc, like being able to take this thing that you've created and make it into a movie. And he was doing that. And plus, the movie had some of my childhood idols. It had Zach Galligan from Gremlins, which I grew up with, and it ended up being Rowdy Piper's last movie. And so, yeah, but once I saw Rowdy Piper, I was like, man, you know, let me go ahead and back that, because that just seems really cool to me. And, you know, being in Vegas, we did one of the most Vegas things ever. And when I backed his project, we did this thing, and we're getting ready to reintroduce it in January, called Support Saturday. And we basically said, hey, you know, we'll place a bet on behalf of your project, and if that bet wins, we'll increase our pledge by 300%. And lo and behold, the Dodgers won, and we were able to increase our pledge to him, and that was pretty cool. And that kind of got Peter's attention as kind of an innovative way to, you know, get eyes on what you were doing. So we were doing something in a cool, innovative way. And when he saw that we were doing Scrimshaw, because on his Kickstarter, he was doing something where he would draw any character you wanted. And so when it came time to draw the characters we wanted, I said, would you draw the guys from Scrimshaw? So we kind of planted that seed in his head of, hey, what's Scrimshaw? And so he took a look at it and realized we were doing it. And he said, hey, do you guys have a publisher? We said, no, we don't. And he said, we hope you'll consider Alterna. And so that was pretty cool. It was kind of a unique way to get a publisher to look at your project without just going through jumping through the hoops of typical submission routes and things like that. Not that we didn't have to submit it, to be perused and get the final judgment, but definitely was a unique way for us to be able to get him to take a look at the project. So that's how we landed there. And obviously the idea is we'd love to do a movie one day. That would be super cool.
Yeah, it's always easier to get publishers' attention when you aren't part of the slush file when they actually come looking toward you. So that's really cool. That's actually a really neat story of how a book got picked up. I've never heard that. But I backed the chair for the same reason. I saw Roddy Piper in the cast. I'm like, oh, I'm in. I don't want to know anything. I don't even know anything else about this. They got my money.
100%. That was the easiest decision I ever made. One of them at least. I just wish they could have said, hey, well, you could pay an extra $100 and have them clothesline you. That would have been the only cut above that would have been awesome, but yeah, it's also a piece of my childhood there,
So when, refresh us on when the book actually comes out again? Like, when does the next issue come out?
We actually have issue number 4 will hit in February. We actually got moved up. Our Volume 1 trade paperback just came out in comic shops last week. We got moved up a couple of weeks. Supposed to be next week, but yeah, we came out last Wednesday in comic shops everywhere, and that's Scrimshaw graphic number 1, 2, and 3 in collected graphic novel form.
So wait, they actually pushed it up. They pushed it up a week.
Yeah, we got hit. We're last week, so yeah, they came out. Our collected came out last week.
Did you know? And you didn't know they were going to push you up a week?
No, I discovered that shortly before. So that's how we did it.
That's kind of frustrating, isn't it? Because that, it seems like that would be like you're trying to make a plan, you're trying to launch the product, you're trying to get people on board, and now all of a sudden you have one less week to work with than you thought you did.
Well, here's what's crazy. It was we kind of ended up with the cart before the horse because Alterna Comics was initially creating just and releasing just collected graphics, like graphic novels, completed graphic novels. And so we had the Scrimshaw graphic novel out to the book trade before our first newsprint issue hit comic shops. And so that's because the development of the Bringing Back Newsprint initiative by Alterna Comics came after we were already in market with Scrimshaw. But the minute we knew that was taking place, that they were going to bring back newsprint, I raised my hand and said we definitely wanted to participate in that because, number one, it was me remember my childhood and get nostalgic for that and wanting to be part of something really cool. And so, yeah, I mean, we're just rolling with the punches right now. We'll have our release situation will be kind of streamlined by February. But yeah, hey, in indie comics, you got to roll with the punches, man, and get in where you fit in. And we're more than happy to do it. And we're enthusiastic about taking part. And that's the best thing. So, you never know what's going to happen. We're happy to be in it. And we just keep going, man. Anything's going to come up and we just do the work, and anything on the other side of that is whipped cream,
And strawberries?
If that's your thing, man, I'm allergic, so.
Cool. And is just for the young crowd out there, the book's also available digitally?
Yeah, we're on Comixology, absolutely. Issues 1 through 4 are currently available on Comixology, so yeah.
Okay, cool.
Most definitely. You could be ahead of the curve with issue 4, which doesn't hit shops until February.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's how our release schedule got kind of out of whack. But like I said, when they were bringing back the newsprint, we wanted to take part in that. So we were more than happy to kind of push back and give a little bit of a delay, which has been a boon to us as creators. It gives us an opportunity. You seldom get an opportunity to kind of get more feedback on your book and see what's working and what's not working, which has really been great for us. We've enjoyed that, and it's allowed us to get in 2 or 3 more conventions, which, helps us with the feedback and tell us what's working and what's not working. So yeah, it's funny when you get a deadline. There's that thing where you have to balance your deadline and your creativity.
Right.
And those 2 things living together, not always harmoniously, definitely shapes your world as a creator. But, it definitely lets you know if you can cut it in the industry, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, it's funny how deadlines can change things. I'm actually a musician. I've been in a lot of different bands, and a band I was in high school, we would jam all the time, and high school and college, and we would write and we would go to the studio. But like what happened was we first decided to do it, we had written a bunch of pieces of songs here and there, and like decided we wanted to record. And I'm like, well, we can't just go into the studio and with pieces. And they're like, well, we'll get there eventually. So we actually decided to just call a studio and book it. And, but we booked it for like a month out. So we knew we had a deadline. We had to have the songs done before we went to the studio. So deadlines can help, but.
Oh yeah, it's supremely important.
Yeah.
It's supremely important. You just gotta look out for the letdown.
Yes.
They say that the old sophomore slump. You had years to develop your first thing, and then your second thing, you have minutes.
Exactly. Cool. So we're getting near the end here. So I want to ask this before I forget. A question that we normally kind of wrap up on is, how do you measure success?
How do you measure success? Well, I mean, for me, at the stage I'm at right now, just being able to be a creator and participate would be amazing. If we could get to the point where, you can pay the bills and live your life and be there for my son's football games and basketball games and things that are coming up, and be able to work in a creative business and have that pay for your daily bread. That'd suit me right down to the ground, man. It sounds like a pretty amazing life, It's in the simple things for sure.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I am totally with you. If this podcast could pay all the bills, I would be very happy. I got I got a 15-year-old and a 23-year-old that's married.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like you said, the simple things. Keep it happy. Yeah. Keep it simple. Cool. So I can't. I mean, I don't want to cut you too short here. So I'm trying to think. JD, do you have any other questions?
I'd like to talk a little bit more about your experiences working with Alterna. This is the first publisher you've worked with?
Yeah, this is the first thing that I've published for sure. Yeah, it's kind of been great. I mean, obviously not knowing much about the business side of comics. I mean, obviously I've been writing for a number of years and honing my craft and things like that. That's been the easy part, but kind of getting the crash course in the business side has been invaluable to me. And Peter being an independent and being able to give you the time you need, you're not going to get your questions answered. And obviously this being the first publisher I've worked with, I don't know how other publishers do it, but I have to imagine, it's sink or swim at the big 2, obviously, and you're well vetted before you get in there. Mm-hmm. So you have to have something on the stick, but at the same time, from some of the other creators I've run into that have worked with Alterna and have worked with other ones, it seems that Alterna is the cream of the crop in the way they handle their business model, their time in the business, and kind of the way they're innovating. But for me, it's been great. Like, I have a thick skin already, having come through the film industry, and the coverage you get in there is brutal. So, if you're not scared and you're not sensitive about someone critiquing what you're doing, and you could take some tough love from time to time, then yeah, it's absolutely been invaluable to me to work with Alterna, and he speaks my language. Like I said, being in the film biz, they're not going to hold your hand. And so you need to be top notch. And sometimes even when you are top notch, it doesn't cut it. So yeah, it's been invaluable to get me up to speed on what goes on. And, I've been a quick study at it. And so we've been able to innovate with some of our promotional efforts. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun and opened my eyes to it and stuff like that. So, I can't speak highly enough about Alterna Comics. That's for sure.
So
That's cool.
So JD, are you shopping for a new publisher?
I'm always on the lookout for a new publisher. I'm always interested in asking questions to people. I think you talk to a lot of indie publishers, and a lot of times you're left with the question of, well, what do they do for you as a writer? Like, I can't say how many indie publishers I've talked to that are like, well, we're a publisher. I'm like, oh, great. Where's the book available? Oh, online. I'm like, well, I can do that myself. And if I got to promote the book myself anyway, what do you do for me? So what I like about this is you're seeing a company that's definitely in the indie space, but that is getting books into shops and is working hard to promote their creators and is expecting them to do some of the major lifting themselves too. But you're not just an island, because there's some publishers that, they just want X percent of your sales and don't do anything for you and don't get you anywhere. And this isn't that case. So I like hearing these, and this is cool stuff, man. And I followed Peter on Twitter for a number of years now. So it's cool to see that the company growing, and I dig what they're doing.
Oh yeah, he definitely sets the blueprint, because like you said, he's been in business for a decade and he's tried these things and tried some other things. But yeah, he has no problem setting out the blueprint of the things you should follow. And in terms of social media, which is completely necessary for any indie creator to be out there heavily on social media and things like that. And that was one of the things that was lacking for me, so to speak, but getting up to speed on that, and Peter basically giving you a blueprint via email is he's like, this is what worked for Alterna. This is what's worked for Alterna creators in the past. He will get you up to speed on that and require you to be out there doing those things. But yeah, it's not like he's just casting you off and saying, here's what you need to do and not giving you a way to do it. No, he's right there. And if you ask, he'll critique what you're doing thus far, which I did not too long ago. And he'll definitely, like I say, give you the tough love and let you know what your promotional efforts are lacking from his basically wealth of knowledge for being in business for the past 10 years rather, and seeing what's going on and what works and what doesn't work. And that's allowed him to obviously expand his line, expand his business. And, nobody's going to champion your project better than you, but Peter's definitely going to give you the base, so to speak, to be able to stand up on his pedestal and wave your arms as much as you can. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely been a very cool experience and rewarding and informational, which is huge,
So are you looking to expand your own brand a little bit? Like, do you have any other projects you want to get done, or are you just kind of going to focus on this one for a while?
We're working on this. We're always working on the next thing. People obviously, and I've learned this from me in the film business, people want to know what your next project is. That's number one in anything. You can be a one-hit wonder, or you can have other things down the pike. And yeah, we're introducing and actually working on another project called Winter Spring with a talented guy who did one of the captain's log pages. His name's Seth Mao, and he lives and works in Australia. And we're working on the principal art for that project. And it's a pretty cool, it's basically kind of an intergalactic gladiatorial planet that's been designated for warfare, exists in space, and all interplanetary wars take place on this planet via small unit combat. And so the contingent from Earth, which is a multinational force, heads off, never having known that even aliens existed. So they basically get their marching orders, end up on a space station, and they're going to set down on this planet and do battle with an alien race for the fate of Earth. And the wrinkle is that when you set down on this planet, there can be any other number of conflicts going on between other alien races already going on when you set down. So it definitely is kind of like a free-for-all, but we're developing that book right now. So
cool.
That does sound cool.
Thanks.
So JD, social media had been mentioned, and I believe you wanted to discuss something.
Oh yeah, you're crazy. That's what I wanted to discuss.
Go ahead. What are we discussing now?
Oh, go ahead. You set the table, John. I don't want to focus on the guy necessarily we started with, but just your assertion afterwards.
Okay.
That I think you're nuts for.
So number one, you call me John.
Did I really? Sorry, Dave.
All right. So I've been friends with Ethan Van Sciver on Facebook for quite a few years now, and a little while ago I reached out and said, "Hey, would you want to come do the podcast?" And he was on the show, and he was, gracious, and he was really nice.
Yeah.
So the other night I'm on Twitter, and just so our listeners know, 99% of what comes out of Twitter is me. I'm the one who controls the Twitter account. And on Bleeding Cool, they had written an article where they were talking about artists in the community for the top two, basically, and who the best artists were. And they get to Ethan Van Sciver, and they put a parentheses comment next to his name, something like, his politics aside, or regardless of what you think about him on a personal level, and he basically tweeted this out and said, hey, like, if you're going to do this to me, then do it to all the creators, but then don't do this. Like, why are you singling me out? So I retweeted it with a message that said, what did I say exactly, JD?
You asked why.
Oh yeah, things that make say
him. Yeah, go ahead.
Things that make you say, You're right. Why do they single Ethan Van Sciver when the person who has, this is the part I think JD has the most problem with, the person who has single-handedly destroyed Spider-Man attacks Bleeding Cool, and he still gets a free pass.
Now, again, I promise to keep politics out of the whole Ethan Van Sciver thing, and I kept my word. I haven't said anything. I'm cool. My assertion is, how the heck do you think Dan Slott destroyed Spider-Man? In what planet is that possible?
Did I say Dan Slott? Did I say his name?
Slott.
Hold on here.
And I asked that, and you smiled. That's the exact reason I brought this up. How is this possible?
Because I haven't liked anything he has written since his Superior Spider-Man.
He single-handedly ruined the character? That's a bit hyperbolic.
Oh, it's just being hyperbolic just to get a reaction. And hey, look, I caught one
worked.
Fish.
Right. I mean, if you're going to get any ink at all, you got to be sensational, right?
Yes. And
yeah, you have to be.
Just so you know, Dan Slott, since we basically were around for about 6 months, has had us blocked on Twitter. So he doesn't even know we said any of this. That goes back to that thick skin thing, man. Well, just take it or get on there and argue. That's what Twitter's for, isn't it? Yeah, there was an argument going on, and about the future, basically the future of comics and Marvel characters, and the way that they were being treated. And I don't remember what the whole argument was. And I didn't even say anything to Dan Slott. I agreed with someone who disagreed with him.
Sure.
And right after that, he blocked me. It was like, whoa, what did I do?
Yeah, it seems a rather mundane reason to block someone, but
yeah.
Sensitivity seems to be in high supply these days from just about everybody. I mean, I guess,
Yes, but I admitted here on air that yes, it was hyperbole just to gain a reaction. But I haven't really enjoyed his work since Superior Spider-Man. I'm just thinking it's funny. The guy who consistently put a book in the top 10 for over a decade has single-handedly ruined a character. I can't. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. It's called sensationalism. Come on now.
Right. I mean, no one can single-handedly ruin Spider-Man, right? Nobody?
And I totally thought you were going to say one more day when this whole thing came up, so I don't have the argument that I had 20 minutes ago.
No. One more day. You could totally blame Quesada for that one. Come on now.
Yes.
Right.
That's when you used the term single-handedly. I was like, oh,
however,
we're going to have this debate.
However, Slott has come out and said that he's never going to bring back the marriage either, as long as he works on the book.
I've kind of come around on that line of thinking, to be honest with you.
As somebody who grew up in the era where they were dating and then got married, no.
I agree with a lot of their. I mean, at the time, no, I was vehemently against it, but I think in the decade that's followed since, like, if there's not certain points they want to go to with the character, right, it is kind of limiting. Like, if they're not in a mainstream story going to give them kids, if they're not going to have them get divorced, if they're not going to have them, really progress the marriage, if they're in a constant neutral state with it, then it really is limiting, right? And there's much more things you can do without them. I love Mary Jane. I love them as a couple. I think it works, but I do see where they're coming from. I do understand that. So,
or he's just appealing to all those 40-something married people out there, or just kind of does go into that and the milestones are lost and what have you. He's appealing to them on a large scale,
Right. Yeah. I mean, come on.
In a very cynical viewpoint, I suppose, It's going back to that American Beauty-esque idea of what marriage is and things like that. So I guess we're going to take it from that side.
But I get where they always come from on it, because when Spider-Man is always transferred to other forms of media, it's always some version of the Romita Ditko Spider-Man. It's always the young Spider-Man. Right. Like, you don't want to have the baggage of an American Beauty-esque Peter Parker. Right. It doesn't work with the property.
That's very true.
You're right, and that I understand, but because they aged him so much in the comics at that point. At the end of One More Day, he's back living with Aunt May. It was like, really? I still see him as a 30-something-year-old now. He's just a 30-something-year-old still living with his elderly aunt.
Which they got away from that rather quickly in the book. It was just that's just with a decade of stories. He's literally had a decade on this title. Yeah. And I'm a big Dan Slott fan. I think he's the best Spider-Man writer since Roger Stern. So, I'll stand by that.
Of course you would.
Yeah, and I do, and so does Marvel, and his 10 years of consistently being in the top 10. So.
But you can't live with the assassination of Ethan Van Sciver's politics at the same time, right? Or no?
Oh, I could care less. I could honestly care less about Ethan Van Sciver's politics.
Right. I totally agree.
It was the whole thing about Dan Slott single-handedly killing Spider-Man. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah,
politics. A person's politics is whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Let's be honest. If you didn't like Dawnbreaker, you need to have your head examined. So just put your politics aside and read the book. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it, put it down.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, too, right? I mean, it should just be about the storytelling and the art. Like, forget the politics of these guys, because unfortunately, social media has given everyone a voice. And regardless of what your politics are, you're not going to agree with all of them. It doesn't take away their talent.
No. Well, and it may inform their storytelling, but hey, whatever. If you're not open to a counter viewpoint or what have you, then I guess block someone. Is that what you do?
If you're Dan Slott, that's what you do.
Ouch. Ouch.
See, people, this is the kind of fun that we have on Twitter. And speaking of that, Eric, how can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter at 100ProofEB. You can find Scrimshaw at Scrimshaw Comic, and then you can find us at Horde Media as well. So,
cool.
Yeah, get on there, and I keep the politics to a minimum. We keep the art to a high level, and we just try to get out there and do our thing for sure. And then I'm also at ericborden.com if you want to check out what I'm doing. I got a number of projects, a short film and things like that that we've been working on. So we just always stay busy. That's for sure.
Cool. So you know what? I guess just real quick to follow up on that, you are still very much pursuing a film career as well. Like, how does that balance out time-wise between the two?
I basically just work and then come home and write and hang out with my son, and that's about it, man. Like, I enjoy writing. As my wife would say, you're the guy who will crack a beer and spend 9 hours in his office by himself. It's one of the things I like to do, so I'm lucky in that way that I like to write. And so, it's a large investment in time, but I like it and I enjoy it. It's my most favorite hobby, so I don't consider it a distraction at all. So, I wish I had more time to write, obviously.
Cool.
But Yeah, the balance is definitely there, but it's what I enjoy. It's what I love to do. So I find it pretty easy.
So people should create a thing and follow their passions.
100%. Put the work in, put the elbow grease in.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do it, just do it. That's a huge part of it, but be prepared to get behind it because nobody's going to take it and push it better than you. Nobody's going to know it better. By the time you get the thing made, nobody knows it better than you. So you should be willing to get behind it.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a great note to end this week's show on. So on behalf of myself and JD and John, who single-handedly ruined this podcast.
Man, I really wish he was on. I wanted to go political today, but maybe next time.
Thank you, Eric, for being on. And
awesome. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate you.
Cool. And to our audience, as always, thanks for listening. And until next week, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.